morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jeffrey Hall, and I'm chairman of Kingston Wharves, and as such, I will serve as chairman of this meeting. On behalf of the board of directors of Kingston Wharves, I'd like to welcome you to the 2023 annual general meeting of shareholders. It is good to be in the presence of shareholders again. We also acknowledge our many shareholders and stakeholders who are watching via the live stream of this, our 78th annual general meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce our company secretary and legal counsel, Mr. Stefan Morrison, and ask that he confirm that the required quorum of 3 members present in person or by proxy has been met.
Chairman, I confirm that we have the quorum.
I now call this meeting to order and invite our Group Human Resources Administration Manager, Mrs. Denise Walcott Samuels, to open in prayer.
Thank you, Chairman. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we're thankful to you for yet another year and for another annual general meeting. It was a year where we saw obstacles, but much more than that, it was a year where we celebrated because we triumphed. We pray a special prayer on our chairman and a blessing, as always, on our board of directors, our shareholders, management, staff, and well-wishers of Kingston Wharves Limited. We also pray a prayer of blessing upon this day's proceedings, and we ask, Lord, that you will lead, guide, and direct. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Denise. The notice convening the meeting, which you can find on page 5 of the annual report, has been circulated to members, and I now propose that we take this notice as read. I wish to inform you that the record date by which proxies to be exercised at this meeting must have been lodged with the company at least 48 hours before the meeting. We received proxies representing 55% of the issued stock of the company. A list of those proxies is available for inspection. The share register, the articles of incorporation, the minutes of the last AGM are also available for inspection by members on the company's website. Ladies and gentlemen, the accounts and the reports of the directors and auditors have been circulated previously to all members. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Mr. Damien Reed from KPMG Chartered Accountants, the company's auditors, and I call on Mr. Reed to read the auditor's report, which may be found on pages 53 to 57 of your annual report.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. So today I'll be reading the auditor's report. It's pretty lengthy. The auditor's report comprises 2 main sections: our report on the financial statements and also the requirements of the Jamaica Companies Act. So I'll be covering those and I'll be flipping from pages, so I'll guide you as I proceed. Independent Auditor's Report. To the members of Kingston Wharves Limited, report on the audit of the financial statements. Opinion. We have audited the separate financial statements of Kingston Wharves Limited, the company, and the consolidated financial statements of the company and its subsidiaries, the group, set out on pages 80 to 128, which comprises the group's and company's statement of financial position as at December 31st, 2022, the group's and the company's statements of profit or loss and other comprehensive income, changes in equity and cash flows for the year then ended, and notes comprising significant accounting policies and other explanatory information. In our opinion, the accompanying financial statements give a true and fair view of the financial position of the group and the company as at December 31st, 2022, and of the group's and the company's financial performance and cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with IFRS standards, as issued by the International Accounting Standards Board, IFRS standards, and the Jamaican Companies Act. Basis for opinion. We conducted our audit in accordance with International Standards on Auditing, ISAS. Our responsibility under those standards are further described in the auditor's responsibility for the audit of the financial statement section of our report. We are independent of the company in accordance with International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants International Codes of Ethics for Professional Accountants, including International Independent Standards, ISBA Code. We have fulfilled our other ethical responsibility in accordance with ISBA Code. We believe that the audit evidence we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. Key audit matter. Key audit matters are those matters that, in our professional judgment, were the most significant in our audit of the financial statements for the current period. These matters were addressed in the context of our audit of the financial statements as a whole, and in performing our opinion thereon. We do not provide a separate opinion on these matters. Valuation of employee benefits asset. The group operates a defined benefit retirement scheme and provide other unfunded retirement benefits. Significant estimates are made in valuing the group's employee benefits assets and obligation. Given the value of the assets and obligation, small changes in assumptions can have a material financial impact on the group. The key assumptions involved in calculating employee benefit asset and obligations are discount rates, inflation, and future increases in salaries and pensions. Management appointed an external actuarial expert to assess in measuring the employee benefit asset and obligations at the reporting date. The use of significant assumptions increases the risk that management estimates can be materially misstated. See Notes 2S 421 of the financial statements. How the matters was addressed in our audit. Our audit procedures in response to this matter included evaluating the independence and objectivity of the appointed actuarial specialists, using our own actuarial specialists to assist in determining that the actuarial valuation was performed in accordance with requirements of IAS 19 employee benefits. Testing employee data provided by management to the actuarial expert. Assessing the assumptions used by the actuary, including inflation and discount rates, by comparing them to information from independent sources. Confirming a section of the plan assets with the custodian of the assets and recomputing the fair value by reference to independent prices and yield curves. Assessing whether disclosures in the financial statements are appropriate in respect to the group's employee employee benefit arrangements. Other matter. The financial statements of the group and the company as at and for the year then ended December 31st, 2021, were audited by another auditor who expressed an unmodified opinion on those statements on March 1, 2022. Other information. Management is responsible for the other information. Other information comprises the information included in the annual report, but does not include the financial statements and or auditor's report thereon. The annual report is expected to be made available to us after the date of this auditor's report. Our opinion on the financial statements does not cover the other information and will not express any form of assurance conclusion thereon. In connection with our audit of the financial statements, our responsibility is to read the other information identified above when it becomes available, and in doing so, consider whether other information is materially inconsistent with the financial statements or our knowledge obtained in the audit or otherwise appears to be materially misstated. When we read the annual report, if we conclude that there is a material misstatement therein, we are required to communicate the matter to those charged with governance. Responsibilities of management and those charged with governance for the financial statements. Management is responsible for the preparation of the financial statements that give a true and fair view in accordance with IFRS standards and the Jamaican Companies Act. And for such internal control as management determines is necessary in enable the preparation of the financial statements that are free from material misstatements, whether due to fraud or error. In preparing the financial statements, management is responsible for assessing the company's ability to continue as a going concern, disclosing as applicable matters relating to going concern and using the going concern basis of accounting, unless management either intends to liquidate the company or to cease operation or has no realistic alternative but to do so. The board of directors is responsible for overseeing the group's financial reporting process. Auditor's responsibility for the audit of the financial statements. Our objectives are to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatements, whether due to fraud or error, and to issue an auditor's report that includes our opinion. Reasonable assurance is a high level of assurance, but is not a guarantee that an audit conducted in accordance with ISAs will always detect a material misstatement when it exists. Misstatements can arise from fraud or error and are considered material if individually or in aggregate they could reasonably be expected to influence the economic decisions of the users taken on the basis of these financial statements. A further description of our responsibilities for the audit of the financial statements is included in the appendix to this auditor's report. This description, which is located on pages 58 to 59, form parts of our auditor's report. I will now turn to that appendix on page 58. As part of our audit in accordance with ISAs, we exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism throughout the audit. We also identify and assess the risk of material misstatement of the financial statements, whether due to fraud or error. Design and perform audit procedures responsive to those risks and obtain audit evidence that is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. The risk of not detecting a material misstatement resulting from fraud is higher than for one resulting from error, as fraud may include collusion, forgery, intentional omission, misrepresentations, or other override of internal control. Obtain an understanding of internal control relevant to the audit in order to design audit procedures that are appropriate in the circumstances, but not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of the group's internal control. Evaluate the appropriateness of accounting policies used and the reasonableness of accounting estimates and related disclosures made by management. Conclusion on the appropriateness of management use of the going concern basis of accounting and based on the audit evidence obtained, whether a material uncertainty exists relating to evidence or conditions that may cast significant doubt on the company's ability to continue as a going concern. If we conclude that a material uncertainty exists, we are required to draw attention in our auditor's report to the related disclosure in the financial statements, or if such disclosures are inadequate, to modify our opinion. Our conclusion are based on the audit evidence obtained up to the date of our auditor's report. However, further evidence or conditions may cause the company to cease to continue as a going concern. Evaluate the overall presentation, structure, and content of the financial statements, including the disclosures and whether the financial statements represent the underlying transactions events in a manner that achieves fair presentation. Obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding the financial information of the entities and or business activities within the group to express an opinion on the consolidated financial statements. We are responsible for the direction, supervision, and the performance of the group audit. We remain solely responsible for our opinion. We communicate with those charged with governance regarding, among other matters, the planned scope and timing of the audit and significant audit findings, including any significant deficiencies in internal control that we identify during our audit. We also provide those charged with governance with a statement that we have complied with the relevant ethical requirements regarding independence and communicate with them all relationships and other matters that may reasonably be thought to bear on our independence, and where applicable, action taken to eliminate threats or safeguards applied. From the matters communicated with those charged with governance, we determine those matters that were of most significance in the audit of the financial statements for the current period and are therefore the key audit matters. We describe these matters in our auditor's report unless law or regulation preclude public disclosure about the matters or when it is in extremely rare circumstances. We determine that the matter should not be communicated in our report because the adverse consequence of doing so would reasonably be expected to outweigh the public interest benefit of such communication. I will now turn to our report on the matters required by the Jamaica Companies Act that can be found on page 57. Report on additional matters as required by the Jamaican Companies Act. We have obtained all the information and explanations which, to the best of our knowledge and belief, were necessary for the purpose of our audit. In our opinion, proper accounting records have been maintained so far as appears from our examination of those records and the financial statements which are in agreement therewith give the information required by the Jamaican Companies Act in the manner required. The partner on the audit resulting in this independent auditor's report is Sandra Edwards, KPMG Chartered Accountants, Kingston, Jamaica, March 1, 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reid. I would now like to introduce our other directors with whom most of you will be familiar. Mr. Mark Williams, our Chief Executive Officer. Mr. Grantley Stevenson, our Vice Chairman. Mr. Bruce Breckheisen. Mr. Roger Hines. Mr. Charles Johnston. Mrs. Kathleen Moss. Mrs. Charmaine Mirage. Mr. Robert Scavone. Mr. Dorian Valdez. Mr. Kim Clark could not be with us in person, but joins us virtually. I'd now ask Mr. Williams to introduce some of the members of the senior group management team.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, shareholders. Let me introduce Ms. Clover Moody, Group Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Valerie Campbell, General Manager, Group Operations, Ms. Denise Walcott Samuels, Group HR and Resource Manager, Mrs. Terry Ann Gordon, Financial Controller, Mrs. Simone Murdoch, Corporate Services and Client Experience Manager, Mrs. Frances Mighty Hutchinson, Internal Audit Manager, Mr. Lance Green, IT Manager, Captain George Reynolds, Managing Director of SAL, Mr. Rodrigo Ollier, Chief Operating Officer, and Mr. Wayne Ballin, Security Manager.
Thank you, Mark. Kingston Wharves is a large and complex business in Jamaica, and your management team, our management team, does the job well, and I want to place on record our appreciation for their leadership and dedication to this business and the results that they delivered for us. Ladies and gentlemen, let us now proceed with the business of this meeting as set out in the notice. And I'll begin by inviting Mark Williams to make a presentation on the performance of Kingston Wharves for 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, colleagues. Morning, shareholders. It is absolutely good to see you this morning, Mr. Staple. I considered going to the barber, but I wanted really to get my hair like yours. So I'm going to do that when I leave here. It's wonderful to see you. What I'm going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is to give you an overview of the business that Kingston Wharves is involved in. I am aware that more and more we have new shareholders, and I really want to give you a perspective of the things that we do. Then I will take you through the results for 2022 and then give you a reasonable outlook with some perspective that we have as a management team, and then give you the results for Q1 2023. Our business. I am going to think it's best to show a video. It's just about a minute long, and then we'll come back to this presentation.
Kingston Kingston Wharves Limited. We are a part of your lives. Moving cargo to support your way of life while supplying your business. We sustain life and health, doing the heavy lifting so you and your family can access life-giving supplies and maintain a positive well-being. We are integral to Jamaica's economic growth and job creation, underpinning the ever-changing landscape of our island and paving the way for a brighter future. Deeply committed, integrated, and ever-present in your lives. While you are sleeping, we are working hard through the night. Multi-purpose, multi-user, relentless. We never stop until we deliver. For nearly 80 years, we have partnered with you, and we remain committed to our promise to see you through every aspect of what you do. Kingston Wharves Limited, we are a part of your lives.
Thank you so much. Basically, what we're saying, shareholders, is that we see ourselves as more than just a terminal business. We see ourselves as fully integrated in the lives of Jamaicans. And certainly as a management team, we are extremely proud that what we do, it's more than just for profit. Remiss of me not to acknowledge my board and their input, their confidence that they've shown in me and certainly the management team. And I just want to pause to acknowledge the board, certainly my chairman. We've had many good discussions and good, robust discussion. And certainly I want to thank you, Chairman, for your leadership and your commitment. Permit me to also acknowledge one of our directors, Dr. Marshall Hall, who passed on last year. Dr. Hall has been a tower of strength in our boardroom and certainly an icon in Jamaica economic development. And we certainly will miss Dr. Hall. His humor and certainly his sound advice. I must tell you that in 2020, when I took over from Mr. Stevenson, somehow the world concocted COVID and directed it at me in my new role as CEO. And while we were struggling to come to terms with what COVID would bring, I got a call from Dr. Hall. And in his usual very deep voice, he said, "Mark, I'm so sorry that you have the job at this time in the midst of COVID, but I'm glad it's you steering the ship." And that gave me confidence and gave the management team confidence to go on. So I really want to salute Dr. Marshall Hall. Thank you. I also want to acknowledge the management team who have supported me and this company over the years, and really to salute the true heroes of Kingston Wharves, the 700 employees that we have. I tell them quite often that my job is very easy. All I do is conduct this orchestra at Kingston Wharves. So I salute the team, all 700 employees. So let's get back to the business of what we do. Terminal business, wherever you are in the world, anchors economies. Certainly in Jamaica, which is an island state, it's even more important. The success of a country, and certainly a country like Jamaica, is linked to the success of the terminal business. And we see, as I said ourselves, as more than just people going to work and earning a salary. We see ourselves as building a nation. We broadly have two divisions, our terminal operations and our logistics services division. For terminal operations, we have 9 deepwater berths, and we move varying cargo types around the terminal operation. We move what matters. Everything in your household, everything in corporate Jamaica chances are it would have come through Kingston Wharves. We're involved in building a nation with our break bulk cargo type. When you pass around Kingston and you see all these new developments, 90% of that steel, that lumber, would pass through your company. We're building a nation. We empower commerce. If you have young kids and they go online and they purchase things overseas and ship them, chances are Kingston Wharves is involved in that. Your large manufacturers, your distributors, chances are they're moving their cargo through Kingston Wharves. We support our economy. So apart from our containerized business, we're also involved in moving food stuff through the terminal. What you're seeing there are two large grain silos, grains, wheat. We move salt, we move edible oils. What we do is support this economy of Jamaica. Also importantly, our containerized business is huge business for us, but equally important is our business of moving cars right through the Caribbean. In fact, our car business continues to connect global markets. We move cargo to over 40 countries worldwide. I'll give you a fun fact. Hogue Auditor, which is a very large European pure car carrier, for the last 3 years, Kingston, Jamaica, through Kingston Wharves, has been the most called terminal for Hogue Autoliners. 3 years running. Let me give you a perspective. We're comparing ourselves with Antwerp, with all the big European countries, the big countries in around Latin America, USA. Kingston Wharves have been the most called terminal for Hogue Autoliners for 3 years. If I was elsewhere in church, I would pause for an amen, but that is okay. Forgive me, it's the preacher in me. So apart from our terminal business, we also are very involved in logistics operation. And certainly the government's mandate of Jamaica becoming the fourth node in this logistics hub, Kingston Wharves is at the forefront of driving that vision, that national vision. We fuel industries. You can see we manage logistics for an international oil company through our warehousing. We drive productivity. 95% of the cars you see around Kingston, the new car that you probably would have purchased recently, chances are came through your company, Kingston Wharves. As I said, what we do is to connect global markets. Our car business, we have connections to every continent on the globe through Kingston Wharves. So that's just a background of what we do, especially for those who are just joining this wonderful initiative, this company we call Kingston Wharves. What I'm going to do now is to take you through the financial results for 2022. At the headline level, the company did very well. Notwithstanding headwinds, notwithstanding challenges, the company did exceptionally well. I'm very pleased to report to you, shareholders, that our revenue was up by 9%, $9.5 billion this company delivered at the top line. Thank you, sister. Operating profit, $3.3 billion, down 16%, but I will explain that to you in a bit. Total assets for this company, for your company, $42.7 billion. I challenge you to find a company on the stock exchange that's not into financial services with such a strong balance sheet of $42.7 billion. And certainly shareholders' equity has grown by 2%. Thank you, sir. Let's take a deep dive into the numbers. So, as you can see from your screen, 9% increase in revenue to $9.5 billion. The operating profit went down by 16%. But let me give you the perspective. Kingston Wharves holds the majority of its cash position in US dollars. We're a net earner of foreign exchange. Much of our capital expenditure is denominated in US dollars, and therefore it's just good business sense to keep most of your cash in US dollars. During 2022, the Jamaican dollars would have appreciated for the first time in a very long while. The impact of that is a loss of about $177 million. You equate that with the gains of $432 million in 2021, the net loss would be over $600 million. My CFO will tell me, Mark, it's exactly $609 million. But for our conversation today, $600 million. If you normalize that, our profit would have been up by 1.6%. The business is solid. But let me give you some more perspective. If you take a 5-year look at the performance of Kingston Wharves, you will see, Mr. Staple, that the revenue has grown compound over the 5 years by 31%. Now, thank you, sir. As a CEO, I'll take that any day. The profit has done even better, by 33% over the last 5 years. This company is solid. Your company is well managed, if I might say that myself. Let's go even further. So I did say that we have two broad divisions, terminal and logistics business. The terminal business continues to be our mainstay. 70% of our revenues from terminal operations and 75% of our profit. But what are the drivers for our business? That's just giving you a 5-year perspective of what I've just told you. But let's look at what is driving the results of our business. Last year, our container business was up by 36%. I must quickly tell you that the transshipment portion of that was up by over 106%. Our motor units business continued to grow, and that was up by 5%. Bulk cargo, primarily there, it's your commodities. And we would have known what happened in 2022 with the Ukraine-Russia war. Commodities, just getting commodities around the world was a problem. And what you're seeing reflected there is the issue with our grain business and our edible oils, etc. For break bulk cargo, primarily it's our steel input. And again, you would see around Jamaica that construction industry, unfortunately, is on a decline. But again, I want to give you a 5-year perspective to put this into context. Our container business has grown by 17% over the last 5 years. Our car business has grown by 66% over the last 5 years. And I must tell you that last year, if we had more space, more terminal space, that business would have seen even larger increase. The break cargo business, again, your commodities business, your food, that would have grown by over 53% in the last 5 years. And again, with the construction industry, with the boom in construction in and around Jamaica, our break bulk cargo business, primarily steel and lumber, would have grown by 61%. Solid business, very focused on what we're doing and delivering results for you, our shareholders. But it's good for me to, give you an overview of our financials and the drivers, but what does this mean for you, our shareholders? As I said, shareholders' equity moved by 2%, $35.8 billion. Dividend declared, again, moved by 12%, just under $1 billion. We, as a company, value your input as shareholders, value your partnership, and we feel it's only right that once the business continues to grow, we give you a reasonable return. I'm going to have a conversation later about our capital project, but I want to give you at the headline that certainly we believe that as our business continues to grow, we continue to give dividend. Earning per shares went down by 16%. Obviously, the equities market is not doing so well, and it's a reflection of what's happening in the wider society. But again, for context, I want to give you a 5-year perspective. Shareholders' equity has grown by 45%. Dividend declared, approximately 50%. In 5 years, your company has returned to you, our shareholders, dividend of just under $1 billion, increasing by approximately 50%. And notwithstanding the challenges of last year, earning per share grew by 39%. That shareholder is an overview of what I would call the dollars and cents. But as you would have seen in the video, Kingston Wharves is more than just the numbers. We are fully involved, fully integrated in our country, in Jamaica, and what we do. And therefore, ESG is very important to us. We're very focused on environmental issues because the nature of what we do in shipping, the environment is just critical. We're concerned about what is happening in the ocean, what is happening in the harbor, in the marine basin. You will see later on the team continue to be involved in cleanup of the Kingston Harbor, continue to be involved in ridding the streets of plastics. Grantley Stevenson, my predecessor, has been a champion for improving the drainage system in and around Newport West. We would have spent in excess of $2 million over the last 5 years just to improve the drainage infrastructure. We're very focused on getting involved in the social outreach in Jamaica. And you will see us being involved in cricket. It's good that the West Indies team has had some success recently. And, you know, we like to tell the story that for the last 30 years, every Jamaican player that plays on the West Indies team would have gone through Kingston Wharves under 15 cricket competition. World-class cricketers like Chris Gayle, Marlon Samuels, Andre Russell, etc., pass through our program. We're very focused on gender equity. And Chairman, I'm pleased to tell the shareholders that 42% of our senior management team represented by women. And it's not just because of their gender, it's because of their quality. I can assure you, because of them, we do have balanced and robust discussions in the boardroom when we have our management meeting. We want to be very focused on climate change. We want to ensure that Jamaica, that Kingston Wharves does its part in developing education and youth education in particular in Jamaica. And therefore, we would have spent quite a bit on adopting schools in and around the community of Newport West. We would have funded degree program for teachers in some of these schools. We would have been involved in breast cancer awareness, missionary of the poor. We give back to our communities. And that is why we're a part of this nation. We're, you know, woven in the fabric of what is Jamaica. So I've given you an overview of what we do as a business, and I've given you a quick overview of 2022. What I want to do now is to give you a quick overview of how we perceive the next 18 to 36 months and to give you a quick look at the 2023 performance. We want to be very upfront and tell you that we still see headwinds, global inflation. The World Bank has suggested that inflation will not be back in line until 2025. There are still issues with supply chain and logistics. There are still some concerns with the foreign exchange volatility, and I told you about the impact net of just about $600 million last year. However, what we're seeing this year is that the dollar is being readjusted, and therefore you will see a small foreign exchange gain. Like any business, we're keeping a very close eye on the interest rate. Last year, in May 2021, the policy rate was 0.5%. That moved to 5% in May, and now 7% in May 2023. I think we'll all agree that in a difficult macro environment, the Bank of Jamaica is doing well. And we certainly want to applaud the governor and his team for what they're doing. But also, what keeps certainly this management team up at night, and certainly Lance, our IT director, cybersecurity. We would have seen recently that companies in Jamaica would have been, breached. Their security infrastructure would have been breached by cyber activities. We are very focused on this, and I can assure you that we are putting investment in that area. So with that overview of 2023 and beyond, let's look at the numbers for first quarter. Sorry, let me go back quickly. So the first quarter results, good. We're 2% up on our revenue. We're at $2.3 billion. And our profit before tax, 5%. Good, but, as optimistic as I am, I want to manage the expectation going forward. We are very bullish on what Kingston Wharves can deliver, but I want to give you a good, sober perspective of what is happening. Exceptionally good first quarter, given all the macroeconomic challenges. The business is doing well. So what are the broad themes for us over the next 18 months to 36 months? We feel that we need to focus on having a performance-driven culture. We generally start with our people because we believe that if we're going to be successful and continue to deliver good results, we need to make sure that we have the right people, that we retain the people, that they're, well-trained and have all the requisite international certification. Once we get our people right, then we will focus relentlessly on our customers and to be very customer-centered, to deliver good service, efficient service to all our customers. To do that as a terminal, we must be a terminal that is fully invested with the requisite infrastructure readiness and equipment that is required to do the business that we do at an international level. We're keeping our focus on digital transformation that will drive the efficiency of our business, that will reduce the cost, structural cost reduction, and of course, sustainable growth and profitability. I'll just take you through a few of them very quickly before I close. Performance-driven culture. We want to have a transformational mindset. You would have seen in the media recently where we made two bold announcements for our team. Valerie Campbell has been appointed General Manager for Operations. Valerie is a veteran, an expert, very experienced in this terminal operations. When we do our checks, she, as a female, has the most senior position in terminal operations around the Caribbean. The customers who know Ms. Campbell knows that she delivers consistently all the time. We've also added to the management team Rodrigo. Rodrigo has about 40 years experience in terminal management, and most recently from the port of Caicedo. And Rodrigo has added to the already very competent workforce that we have. We're very focused on having our team well trained and having international certification. And we're looking at the next line of management succession planning. We're very focused on that. Infrastructure readiness. I have a video that I will share with you. Thank you. What you're seeing there, shareholders, we shared with you last year for very ambitious capital investment. What you're seeing is the main part of that. That's a $30 million investment in BERT 7. What this will do is align our BERT 8 and 9 with 7, thus allowing us to facilitate the docking and stevedoring of multiple Panamax vessels. Vessels aren't getting smaller, they're only getting larger. And the management team and the board felt it important to invest in the capital infrastructure of our terminal. And what you would have seen on the video is some of the work at BERT 7. Equally important in our capital investment, we would have started a series of land acquisition to expand the footprint of the terminal. What you're seeing there is an overlay of the Newport West area and just giving you an indication of some of the plans that we have. So what you see in red, those are the properties that we already own, that we continue to purchase. What you see in white, that's the vision. We're doing it block by block. We believe that in the next 12 to 18 months, we'll be able to move the boundaries of the terminal by one block. That will allow us to have 25% more capacity, berthing and yard space capacity, so we can expand this business. Coupled with that, the expansion of BERT 7, the expansion of the terminal boundaries, we will be taking off those buildings that are on the terminal and relocate them. Those are services that are not necessarily needed to be on the terminal. When we couple all of that, we'll be able to manage 1 million TEUs of container operations through Kingston. Now we're about 500, 600,000 TEU. What we're doing is preparing your company to continue to be a big deal in the Caribbean and Latin America. And if you are elsewhere, you'll know that we're not small fries. We're a big deal. So that's what we're doing on the terminal side. And quickly, just a few more slides. What we're doing on the logistics. Again, we would have shared with you, shareholders, that a part of the capital investment is to construct a first-class warehouse, cold storage, logistics facility. This is another $25 million that we're investing. The investment, the capital work has started. In phase 1, we'll be delivering approximately 60,000 square feet of cold storage facility. Much of that is already gone, thanks to the commercial team that's negotiating those contracts. And then also, we would have 70,000 square feet of dry goods. We believe that one of the lessons that we've learned from COVID is that nearshoring is a real opportunity for countries like Jamaica. And we're putting our money down. We're putting the stakes in the ground so that we can realize those opportunities when they come. So it's infrastructure development. We're looking both our terminal business, our logistics business. As I said, it's very important that we continue to focus on digital transformation. I shared with you last year that Kingston Wharves was awarded an international award based on our involvement in technology. And we competed with some of the largest terminals around the world, and we won that award. We'll be upgrading our terminal operating system. When you're moving cargo through a terminal, at the level that we're moving, you need an efficient, robust IT system to do that. And we would have invested a lot in that, and we would have gone live yesterday or the day before with the new terminal operating system. We're moving to do contactless clearance. There's no need for people to make it an outing to come and get your barrel and your boxes and your personal cargo at Kingston Wharves. We're very focused on e-learning, again, so we improve the competence of our team. So we talk about cybersecurity and investments that we're putting into cybersecurity. I want you to take note of this slide because it gives an idea of the mindset of your management team. We feel after investing approximately $60 million in our business, in our terminal business, in our logistics business, we must grow the bottom line of our business. Our terminal business, as I said, is well structured, well invested. We feel that there are some opportunities to grow in our logistics business. And we think there's a minister a few years ago that always talked about multimodal. We feel that as a company, we want to get in every area of logistics, every area of transportation, and that's what we plan to do. We want to consolidate our position as an auto transshipment hub in the Caribbean. We want to sweat the assets. We want to diversify the offering that we're talking about, and we want to expand our terminal business and our logistics infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to assure you as I take my seat that notwithstanding the headwinds, notwithstanding geopolitical issues and inflation issues and foreign exchange issue, the ship of Kingston Wharves is steady. I want to assure you that you would have seen the balance sheet, $42 billion in asset. You who peruse it even closer, you'll realize we have a very strong cash position. And we're using that cash to bolster the business, to prepare for the future. We have a very competent management team that we continue to add to develop. And equally important, we have a very experienced board of directors. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I think you can be assured that your company is in good hands. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. You gave us a lot of confidence. We're open for questions. I would ask you to state your name before asking a question, and microphones are on either side of the room.
Mic check. Yes, Mr. Al. We're going to begin up, let's not win the award, but the reason why we don't win the award, let's set the trend. I'm not follow. I'm not set the trend, that's why I'm not win the award, you know? All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah. You can turn to page 65. Note 8, note 9, and note 10. You there, Mr. Chairman? You there? All right, 2022 and 2021. Your revenue, direct expense, gross profit, other operating income, administrative expense, open profit, your financial assets, profit before taxation, taxation expense, and net profit for the year. All right, start with 10 first. The profit for the year, 2,301,838,000. We got the top part, 2022. Your revenue first, 7,959,492. You can give an explanation of revenue, direct expense. The bracket here, $4,101,313. Quick explanation, 2022 alone. 2022 alone.
Thank you, Mr. Young. What I'm going to do is take from you one question now, which I'll now answer, and invite other questions. So if you could make the microphone available,
Yeah.
and I'll answer that question in due course.
It's 10 now, and you have 8, 9, and 10. And below it, give a little explanation.
Yeah, I'm going to give the explanation to Mr. Young.
Yeah.
But you can make the microphone available for the next question, please.
All right, let me finish this one. Other income achievement, you got explanation it on here. Profits and losses. All right.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Young is asking, and we're taking questions at the microphone, and I'm going to acknowledge Mr. Rose, and afterwards Mr. Staple. But let me answer Mr. Young's question. He's making reference to the company statement of comprehensive income, which of course sets out the revenues, the expenses, the net profit for the year, and makes a comparison between 2021 and 2022. Thank you. Mr. Rose.
Good morning, Chairman, fellow shareholders, and members of Kingston Wharves. So my first question, would be related to the relative stability we've seen in the FX rate over the last couple of years. So for persons who actually want to follow page 69 in the annual report, you would have seen a reversal from a $357.52 million gain to a $160.62 million FX loss in 2022. So first query, is does Kingston Wharves derive a significant amount of income in US dollars? Are there hedging strategies? And the final part to know is more so, can there be an indicator like an EBITDA measure to kind of give shareholders that perspective of normalized earnings?
Okay, thank you very much, David. In the Managing Director's statement, in addressing the variance between 2021 and 2022, Mark highlighted the FX difference as being the material explanatory factor for the reduction in profit. And he mentioned that the prior year gain was quite significant, and this year there was an FX loss. And so your point about clarifying that is something we take seriously, and we've actually identified it both in the presentation, but also in the narrative that accompanied the releases throughout the year. What is fair to say is that if you normalize for the FX movement year on year, you would see a low single-digit increase in operating profits. A question could be, which we believe represents, as you described, a stable earnings position in the context of very significant increases in fuel costs, for example, during the year. If you might ask what our position is on continuing to carry long US dollar position in the business, we do review that periodically as a business, and our current view is, in light of the capital expenditure program that Mark outlined, the vast majority of which is in US dollars, we're comfortable continuing to hold a USD long position.
Thanks. And just one other question before I give Mr. Staple the chance to respond. His question was with respect to the capital expenditure program. So Kingston Wharves has a very low leverage position, so not much debt in relation to equity or even assets. And I note, as you mentioned earlier, that the company has a significant amount of short-term investments on its books, which is basically cash. So at least for you or Mr. Williams, in the sense of, under the current context of elevated interest rates is it that the company will potentially pursue some level of debt for potential refinancing in the future, a mixture of debt and equity, debt and cash now, or just using cash and then use some debt later on the line?
Thanks, David. We finance investments with a mixture of our existing capital as well as debt, if it's attractive, and we also maintain income earning cash position at the same time. I don't know if Mark or Clovey want to elaborate on that.
Good morning. Just to add that in 2023, you'll see us taking on some debt to fund the capital projects that we are now executing.
What we've been able to do, David, is invest our cash right now at fairly attractive returns. And because we were quite prudent in locking in long-term loans at attractive rates, we've been able to keep our balance in the current environment. And so we're relatively happy with our funding structure. But it's something that we definitely continue to review. Mr. Staple? Mr. Staple, excuse me, Livingston, let me just do the rounds and then we'll come back to you if you have a question. Yeah.
This meeting today. And we thank you, Mr. Chair, and your members, your board members, for allowing us to meet face to face. It has made a big of a difference, Mr. Chair, for us to meet face to face rather than virtual. We appreciate it very much, and we hope that God's blessing continues to be with us.
Good to be back together.
Mr. Chair, I will not leave out Dr. Marshall Hall. Very good friend of mine, along with Mr. Charles Johnston. Two good friends of mine. And I hope that what Dr. Marshall did will come to fruition more and more every day to us. And as Kingston Wharves, we know they will take into consideration what he did and what he continues to see happening in Kingston Wharves today.
Hear, hear.
So thanks to you, Mr. Marshall Hall. Although you have passed on, your presence is still with us here. And Mr. Johnston, thank you very much, sir, for all what you have both done, and for all the members of the board, for what they have continued to do to give us the results we are seeing here today. Mr. Chair, my first question on page 80. Page 80. Why is it the entitlement of group insurance benefits are conditional on an employee remaining in service up to retirement age? Why?
Thank you, Mr. Staple.
And my other question, Mr. Chair, on page 98. Explain the upward movement of staff costs from 2.164 billion in 2021 to 2.487 billion in 2022. Also, other moving up from 306.7 million to 332 million.
Thank you, Mr. Staple. Let me just take those two
lastly,
questions.
Mr. Chair.
Yes? Okay.
Page 121. The Port Authority of Jamaica, under the Wharfage Act, mandated the creation of a special reserve to be provided throughout the tariff rates for the replacement and or rehabilitation of the wharf facilities. What is the value of this today? And also, what of the depreciation charge reserve? Are these reserves being adhered to as realized by the Port Authority of Jamaica? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Staple. So the first question, Clover, is in relation to the entitlement to post-employment health care and life insurance benefits. And the question is, why are these conditioned on the employee remaining in service up to retirement age and the completion of a minimum service period. At a commercial level, and I'll ask Clover to give a view at the accounting level, at the commercial level, these benefits are of significant value and material cost to the company. And as a policy matter, they're given to employees who stay with the company through to retirement, as opposed to making them available after retirement to persons who did not serve the career up to retirement with the company. Clover, I don't know if you wanted to share the accounting implications of that or any other information on it.
The accounting implications, and it's reflected in the accounts and in note 21 of your financials, you will see that obligation. And as the chairman has mentioned, it is a benefit for employees who would have remained with us up to the age of retirement. That's the entitlement. And that's accounted for in our liabilities. So employee benefit obligation is the value of that benefit to our pensioners.
So we make a reserve. That's prudent to deal with that. The second question I'd like to refer to Mark, which has to do with and I think it's a very important question for business in Jamaica and more generally, but the increase in staff costs on page 98, I think is a summary.
Sure.
From 2.2 billion to 2.5 billion, using round numbers.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Staple, thank you. Apart from the fact that we're really in an employees market, the fact is that there are two aspects of our labor. One is a fixed, permanent arrangement, and then the other is a casual arrangement. So during my presentation, you would have seen that the container business increased by 36% and the car by 5%. So we would have taken on additional labor to address the increase in business. That position will not be reoccurring this year unless the business continues to grow by that. So one, it's an employees market. But more importantly, is that the increase in cargo required that we had more casual labor to stevedore the vessels, to move the cars around, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you. The third question, has to do with the asset replacement rehabilitation reserve and the way that works. Clover, can you give a view on that?
The value of the asset replacement and rehabilitation reserve, the value of that reserve is now $212 million. You ask whether we have enough funds and is the depreciation fund being funded. It is not being funded at this time because we have done capital projects way in excess of the value of the depreciation fund, and we continue to do additional capital works. That is what we have referred to in the note, that we're awaiting the final approval by the Port Authority for those funds to be approved in lieu of putting it into a reserve, because we have actually been spending.
So the way it works, Mr. Staple, just for your benefit, is that because Kingston Wharves operates as a public wharf and has that service that Mark articulated so well to Jamaica, in order to make sure that it's well maintained, which it is, the Port Authority requires us to put aside some money. And what Clover is saying is that, and that money is put aside to maintain the capital of the terminal. And what Clover is saying is that we're doing that and more.
So, Mr. Chair, I don't understand that the amount of the reserve that is being mandated by the Port Authority is being adhered to.
Yes, sir. And then some, for all the reasons that Mark Williams articulated earlier.
And Mr. Chair, since I'm on the floor, I would like to take the opportunity of thanking our ladies for the hard work they're putting in, the Murdochs, the Moody's, and all
The Campbells.
operations ladies.
Yeah.
Very good work that they are doing, sir, and I congratulate them on continuing.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a small quarrel with Mark describing one of our very senior experienced executives as a veteran, because it doesn't show. But I take the point. Mr. Rose.
Hello.
Excuse me.
Not Natasha Go Jen. One way to describe Kingston Wharves is rich. So since we are so wealthy, do you plan to go into real estate?
Since we're so wealthy, do we plan to go into real estate?
Yeah.
So I think we don't view our motivation as simply because we have the resources, but what we are doing is making very substantial investments in property, real estate, if you will, that serves the logistics function and objectives. And so in terms of existing warehouse space in Newport West that's covered, we have about 400,000 square feet. And Mark Williams articulated our expectation to bring another 127,000 square feet on within the next 12 months. And so the short answer to your question is yes, we are continuing to develop real estate in and around the Newport West area.
Okay. So, next question. Since the Jamaican dollars has been so defensive against the U.S. dollars since in the few years, swinging from 150 to $156 for U.S. dollars for one, do you have a team in place to mitigate the loss or the gain against the U.S. dollars?
The depreciation of the U.S. dollar?
Yeah. Like, do you know when to buy when it drop, or where do you do that? Buy when it drop and sell when it up?
Okay, thank you. Clover, do you speculate on foreign exchange?
I was going to say, Chairman, that we don't speculate on the foreign exchange market. Our core business is terminal operations and logistics. We're a net earner of foreign exchange, and we tend to stay in our lane and focus primarily and doing a good job at what we're experts at. So we don't speculate.
But shareholder, what I should articulate, and I think Mark has said before, if the concern that you have and other shareholders have is a concern about a depreciation of the Jamaican dollar relative to the U.S. dollar over time, which has been the case, we think that the nature of Kingston Wharves is a natural hedge against that because we do earn U.S. dollars.
Yeah, but we have lost so many U.S. dollars according to your report. So if we have someone in place to measure the losses, wouldn't have lost so many U.S. dollars.
Okay.
We have a team, we have a treasury team internal to Kingston Wharves that manages all of our treasury funds. So yes, we have someone who is managing our funds and our investments.
Thank you. Mr. Rose. Let me just take Mr. Rose and I'll circle back to you. Let me say thank you.
Mr. Hall, can you hear me? All right. So 3 critical questions. Apologies. So the first question is with respect to the Data Protection Act. So on page 40 of the annual report.
Page 40?
Yes.
Yep.
The middle area of that page where it starts with environmental, it references, instituting mechanisms to ensure the compliance with the Data Protection Act. So where is Kingston Wharves along that path in terms of in compliance of the Data Protection Act? And, what is the posture in terms of dedicated capital towards cybersecurity for Kingston Wharves?
Good question.
Thanks for the question, David. So where we are is that we have formulated a small team that is dedicated to looking at how Kingston Wharf is going to implement our framework. We are at the point now where by the end of the year we anticipate that we will have a framework for approval for the board, and we also have from last year been training our staff and our directors on what to expect with the implementation of the Data Protection Act. So we've taken a very proactive response to this because we know how important it is. Thank you.
Just to be clear, David, the Data Protection Act is one element of your question, and that's being handled with a team that complies with all the requirements of the Act, which certainly has been subject to board review. Your wider additional question about cybersecurity is another very important question for a terminal like ours. And you would note, just for example, that one of the things that the Executive Committee actually stated in the annual report as an area of oversight, but it's also the sort of board oversight and senior management oversight, is our cybersecurity protection. both at the level of the technology that we've invested in, but also the training of the entire team to be aware of issues like phishing and ransomware, etc. So it is an area of very significant focus and investment for Kingston Wharves.
And my other question, so earlier Mr. Williams spoke about succession planning, and it was good, he mentioned that you have a senior individual who is most senior in the region, as a woman. So I recall, that Mr. Stevenson would have stepped down and Mr. Williams would have come in as a new head. So in terms of future succession planning for Kingston Wharves, how is that evolving in a sense?
Yeah, it's a good question, David. I think that you'll observe that we have a diverse team in the way that Mark described it, but it's also diverse generationally. And so I think we have bench strength at various levels in the company. I don't think it's a risk that we definitely pay attention to and consider significant, but I think it's a risk that's reasonably well managed, i.e. that we have strong capabilities at different generations that can ensure 10-year or longer succession of leadership in the organization at the most technical operational levels of the business. But Mark?
You're right, Chairman. I wondered if David was suggesting something about my age.
No.
I'm kidding, David. I'm kidding. The gray hairs are there. But Chairman, you're absolutely right. We do have a strong bench, and some of them are here. If I ask Everton to stand up, Wickham, we have about 5 or 6 person. Rohan, strong terminal people. Rohan is behind, that are being prepared, along with Valerie and Rodrigo, with his experience across the globe. We do have a strong bench for both terminal and logistics. And beside me, my CFO is talking about a strong finance team. It's right across the organization, and it does get the focus of the board subcommittee, in particular, that deals with HR.
My final question with respect to, earlier you mentioned the expectation that, the expansion for Berth 7, should be completed later this year. You mentioned the size of the Panamax sized vessels, and, we're talking about the transshipment point that you mentioned earlier in terms of being a logistics point. So in terms of the future for Kingston Wharves in being that solutions player, where do you see yourself? Because you have the Ashenheim project, which is going to be a critical piece of real estate. I recall a couple of years ago you got that other part of your joint venture, and you have different elements from how you're going to capitalize on just this whole transformation in shipping. So that's just where my query is coming from.
Mark?
So you're right, David. We are very focused on expanding our business and the offering that we have. And for that reason, we have invested, as I said, just over $60 million in getting our terminal infrastructure right, and also the logistics. So what we say to ourselves is we will get, a bite of the cherry from the terminal operations, but also our logistics operations. So we are very focused on expanding both at the same time, and we're investing to make sure that we have well-invested terminal, state-of-the-art equipment, and of course, personnel who are well-trained.
One of the things that you'll observe, David, when you look at the pictures here, and you look at other pictures of other terminals around the world, is that this terminal, the utilization is pretty high, which so far is good news for shareholders, but it means that if we have a vision for expanding the business, we have to have more capacity. And so all the things that we're doing are designed to address that need. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Can you turn to page 93, please? Note 3, risk management.
Okay, we're going to ask that the questions be brief, given that time is upon us.
Interest rate incentive, the group and the company, changes in basic points. 2022, 2021, I see a plus 100, plus 300, plus 100. of $63,597,000 in profit before taxation 2022 and 2021, and $59,412 and $67,200,000. You can give an explanation between 2021 and 2022. Change in the
Yes, I can explain it. Let me do that for you now, and then I'll take another question right afterwards from Mr. Bloomfield. 1 second. So, thank you.
One more, Mr. Attendant. Other price peak. The group export a 6% 2021 and a 5% increase and a decrease. Can you give explanation, please? Note I and note D. Capital management. Note I and note D.
Thank you. So the first question is very important nowadays, which is to do with the impact of interest rates on the business. And so that note that was raised addresses what happens to our profits if there's a change in the interest rate. The other question is really about our policies, which are applicable to the discussion earlier about financing our business and our capital adequacy.
Pleasant good morning to you all. Lancel Bloomfield, shareholder. Mr. Chairman, I have just 2 questions. The first is, in shipping barrels through Kingston Wharves, how do you differentiate between a personal effect barrel and a commercial barrel? And just before you answer that question, sir, a few years ago, I was in Curacao, Free Zone, and I purchased several items. And so I can't get this information. So what I did was to pack 6 boxes, and never mind that when I got them to Jamaica, customs gave me hell. They checked 6 boxes and the duty went through the roof. And I have been down on the wharf. I have seen in the past how inefficient it was because people pack up days there. I'm not saying it is now.
Yeah.
I have seen a more efficient flow of things down there. But I'm not sure as to what was said to me when I got here is that if I put more than 6 of the same items into the barrel,
right,
it would be
let's answer
constituted.
both questions, Mark. A, personal effects versus commercial, and B, initiatives to make the business of clearing, I would say, LCL cargo more efficient.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Bloomfield. So, Jamaica Customs is the authority that determines if your cargo is what they view as personal effects or commercial. So, while Kingston Wharves will facilitate the clearance of your cargo, a determination of which category, that is the jurisdiction of Jamaica Customs. What are we doing to facilitate the movement? And I'm happy that you said things have changed. We've implemented several initiatives, the most recent of which is what we call Click and Collect, where you literally go on your smartphone and you pay all your charges, including Jamaica Customs, and you do a curbside pickup. So there is no longer need to be at the wharf for 2 hours. You literally can do in 10 minutes by doing everything on your mobile phone.
Okay. So I'm still have to be mindful as to what I actually put in a barrel to send.
Yes.
Yes. If you stuff the barrel full of, single items to resell to a third party, most likely that would be deemed to be commercial cargo. If you just put your clothes that you want to bring back home that you bought for yourself, it's most likely going to be deemed to be personal effects.
Okay. My last question. Page 98, note 6, expenses by nature.
Page
98, note 6, under expenses by nature. What has caused this significant jump in your IT costs, moving from 104 million in 2021 for the group to that of $142 million in 2022?
Good question.
So, thank you. Very good question. We have been talking about the threat and risk of cybersecurity. So, we would have been very focused in making sure that the cybersecurity infrastructure in Kingston Wharves is very robust. That's one. And two, I made mention in my presentation about the digital transformation that we're doing. Click and collect, for example, a mobile app on your phone. So what we're trying to do is to move the business in the era of digital technology, and that requires substantial amount of spend. So that's the reason for it.
And shareholders, just to give some color to it, when you see one of these ships pulling up with cars and it's discharging 2,000 cars or that order of magnitude, and then a certain number of those cars have to be reloaded to go to 12 different countries, you have to keep track of all those cars. You can't lose the car keys for one of them. You can't put it in the wrong place when you put it in the ship and have it go to the wrong port. And so all of this thing needs to be tracked in great detail. And so we are investing in IT systems that can do this efficiently.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chief.
It's a staple.
In 2021, every dollar of revenue that we earn, 2021, every dollar of revenue that we earn, we have to spend 65 cents. And we only have profit of 35 cents. In 2022, Mr. Chair, every dollar of revenue earned, it costs us 72 cents, and our profit slipped to $28. What is interesting, Mr. Chair, incrementally, that is 22 over 21. The revenue that we earned was $637 million incrementally. And that $637 million cost us $1.1 billion. Which means that for every dollar of that revenue that we earn, we have to spend $1.01. What does that mean here?
Good question. I think, I'll ask Mark to take it, but it has to do with the point that was raised in Mark's presentation. So first of all, within that is the finance expense associated with FX, which does change the position somewhat. Also, as discussed, there was a change in the work conditions and work requirements as the capacity increased, so the staff costs. Fuel, and if you looked at the list of actual expenses, fuel was very significant and was impacted by the conditions globally. What I can say, and I think it's important for us to say to you, is that this is an area of great focus, the operating efficiency of the terminal, and gets a lot of attention from us. And so thanks for highlighting it. Mark, do you want to add anything?
Chairman, I think you've covered it well. It's $177 million from the foreign exchange losses. In addition to just having increased labor to facilitate the increase in business. And another important aspect is we would have done a demolition of a building, and that $85 million would have hit the P&L also. What we did was to create more cargo space for the facilitation of cars. So the FX loss, the increase in labor because of the increase in business, and general inflationary increase. For example, a stack of tire, we have approximately 30 stackers. One of those tires 18 months ago cost $600,000. It's now $1 million. So just your standard increase in fuel and nature of what we do.
Well, I don't understand, Mr. Chair, that the cost of operation at Kingston Wharves is going to continue to increase significantly. Am I correct?
Obviously this is the question that everybody's asking themselves, from the Federal Reserve to the Bank of Jamaica. What is fair to say is that at the level of headline inflation in Jamaica, it is normalizing within the band that we set for ourselves. But what we can say to you as shareholders is that the service that we offer to the world, we believe it will remain competitive. And by that I mean that we'll be able to cover inflationary increases over the medium to long run in the business and maintain our profit position. Predicting inflation is not really our core business. But what we can say is that we'll be competitive regardless of the inflationary environment. That's our standpoint.
Mr. Chair, I hear what you're saying, sir. But I was wondering if going forward, the investors, the big investors like Jamaica Producers Group, etc., will they be willing to continue at these high rates to continue investing in Kingston Wharves?
The high rates, the high costs?
Yes.
I mean, I view Kingston Wharves as a very strong core asset. And certainly you attended the annual general meeting of the Pan Jamaica Group, at which they expressed their continuing strong interest in this as part of their portfolio. But that's for a different AGM. What Mark Williams said is that his Q1 numbers showed improved profitability, and that's, I think, the direction of the company.
Because incrementally, Mr. Chair, when you look at the incremental aspect of the business, it is telling us, as shareholders, and as people in general, it is telling us that, look, going forward, we have a higher rope to skip over.
You know, this is a big question that we have to ask, and I don't want to pretend to have the answers here, but, you know, at some AGMs you're going to hear an idea that a big problem in Jamaica is wage inflation and wage increases and a shortage of labor. You know, that's what we've been working for, frankly, as a country, is to be able to have wage increases and to have people being employed. And so there's no question that that was an impact that flowed through the P&L in 2022. But at Kingston Wharves, we don't view it as an existential threat or a crisis. We view it as an opportunity to remain efficient, to invest in our capacity, to expand what we're doing, and that continues to be our outlook. And I think it's bearing results in Q1 of this year. Thanks for the question.
I hope that our hard-working staff at Kingston Wharves will continue to push their hard work and will be able to overcome the challenges.
Thank you. This is your last question, Mr. Young. Note 8, 9, and 10 show a breakdown of the expenses in detail for shareholders as against the revenue and make a comparison between those numbers in 2021 and 2022. And if you have any other questions on that, we can definitely take them after the meeting. If there's no other questions... Yeah. 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 So some assets are reflected on our balance sheet and can gain value or lose value, and rather than bringing it into profit or not, having not realized them, we mark down and take account of the changes in those assets and keep it in comprehensive income. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your comments, your observations, and suggestions. We have endeavored to answer your questions and trust that we have done this to your satisfaction. I now wish to proceed to the consideration of the resolutions before us. I refer to the first item of business, which is to receive and approve the audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2022. The accounts and the reports of the directors and auditors have been previously circulated to all members. And Mr. Reid from KPMG has read the auditor's report. I now ask that the director's report, which may be found on page 23 of the annual report, be presented, and ask our company secretary to read the first resolution for consideration.
That the audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2022, and the reports of the directors and auditors circulated with the notice convening the meeting be adopted.
Any against? I declare the motion carried. I now ask our secretary to read the second resolution for consideration.
That, as recommended by the directors, the interim dividend of 24 cents per share paid on August 17, 2022, and of 43 cents per share paid on January 17, 2023, be and are hereby declared as final, and no further dividend be paid in respect of the year under review.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. A second. Mr. Campbell. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? I declare the motion carried. We'll take questions. Excuse me, is this question related to the resolution before us? Thank you. The directors retiring from office by rotation pursuant to Article 107 of the company's Articles of Incorporation are Messrs. Mark Williams, Dorian Valdez, Roger Hines, and Kim Clark. All the retiring directors being eligible offer themselves for re-election. I now ask our secretary to read the third resolution for consideration.
That Mr. Mark Williams be and is hereby re-elected a director of the company.
Thank you, Mr. Staple. Second, Mr. Rose. Thank you. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? I declare the motion carried. Stefan?
That Mr. Dorian Valdez be and is hereby re-elected a director of the company.
Proposer? Mr. Johnston? Second, Mr. Hines. Those in favor? Any opposed? I declare the motion carried.
That Mr. Roger Hines be and is hereby re-elected a director of the company.
Mr. Staple, Mr. Rose, all in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? I declare the motion carried.
That Mr. Kim Clark be and is hereby re-elected a director of the company.
Mr. Rose, Mr. Staple, those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? I declare the motion carried. Before I ask our company secretary to read the fourth resolution, I'd like to take this time on behalf of the board and the company to acknowledge and express our appreciation for the work of our auditor, KPMG, for their sterling service to the company. Due to recent changes within the group structure to which Kingston Wharves belongs, the company now seeks to retain PricewaterhouseCoopers. This is consistent with best practice in the governance principles in the audit process between the parent company and a subsidiary. In that context, I now ask our secretary to read the fourth resolution.
That PricewaterhouseCoopers be and are hereby appointed auditors for the company in replacement of the retiring KPMG chartered accountants to hold office until the next annual general meeting at a remuneration to be fixed by the directors of the company.
Your proposer, Mr. Rose, second. Mr. Staple, thank you very much. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Are there any opposed? Thank you. I declare the motion carried. I now ask our Secretary to read the fifth resolution before the meeting, which concerns remuneration of the directors. And please note that the directors' fees for 2022 are indicated on page 119 of the annual report and in the Observer.
That the amount shown in the account of the company for the year ended December 31st, 2022, as fees of the directors for their service as directors be and are hereby approved.
Thank you. Second. Mr. Staple, those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Okay, we'll declare that motion carried. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the formal business of this annual general meeting. I thank you for attending and, importantly, for your continued confidence and support, which is so necessary for our success. I also, on behalf of our directors, wish to thank the board, management and staff who all worked hard to successfully deal with the challenges experienced during the year and deliver a strong result for shareholders. I now declare this meeting closed. Wish you well and hope that you continue to keep safe and healthy. Thank you. Mr. Staple. Hear, hear. Thank you.
Kingston Wharves Limited. We are a part of your lives. Moving cargo to support your way of life while supplying your business. We sustain life and health, doing the heavy lifting so you and your family can access life-giving supplies and maintain a positive well-being. We are integral to Jamaica's economic growth and job creation, underpinning the ever-changing landscape of our island and paving the way for a brighter future. Deeply committed, integrated, and ever-present in your lives. While you are sleeping, we are working hard through the night. Multi-purpose, multi-user, relentless. We never stop until we deliver. For nearly 80 years, we have partnered with you and we remain committed to our promise to see you through every aspect of what you do. Kingston Wharves Limited, we are a part of your lives.